Well, good Sunday to everybody. Hi, everyone. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to a late Sunday morning edition of the Joe Chaffee Weather Show. I thought it would be a good idea with the weather going on today in the east and also the weather that's going on in the Rockies because they have what I would describe as a double snowstorm that will be getting underway with for the first round of energy coming for tonight and Monday, and then another round that is coming for Tuesday and Tuesday night into early Wednesday. So, hope everybody's having a good weekend so far. Here in the east, we've got this well advertised storm system that has now moved up over the Great Lakes. Had a bit of a tropical signature to it, which we expected with that feed that was coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. They got a tropical storm name out of the way, Olga. It was really a small, low-level swirl. I think you could probably make an argument that there wasn't it wasn't worth giving it a name. By the way, you still have Pablo, which is a small cyclone within a cyclone. It's a large extratropical cyclone. You're seeing the smaller system kind of rotate around it. It's the sort of thing that happens from time to time. I don't know. I wish I knew clearly what the criteria was when it comes to naming some of these things, if only because there was a time where the Hurricane Center oftentimes wouldn't ignore whole systems until the very end, until they absolutely had to upgrade them. And now it seems like they sort of go in the other direction where every swirl that's out there gets named. So, well, no, doesn't matter. The tropical moisture has brought the rain up into the northeast, and we're going to take a look at that. I hope everybody's hearing me okay. The wonderful thing about Microsoft and with Windows 10 is that it resets my audio levels every single time I do a live stream. So it makes my life exceptionally difficult. So some of you are saying that you're hearing some static. I have no idea where that static is coming from. This is really very frustrating for me. I have only one audio port opened up. So if you could just give me an indication here of whether you're still hearing static or not, that would be great. I even got myself a special mic, a really good microphone. So David Schwartz, you're not hearing any static. All right, look, I'm going to just assume that it's okay, and I'll just have to continue to. I'm going to have to just continue to try to find a solution to all this problem, this particular issue, when I do it from my house. All right, so let's get this weather thing started here. I apologize again for any audio issues, but nothing I could really do. So I'm going to start off with today's surface map here, and we'll see that we have this wrapped up surface low as of 9Z. Let's see if the 12Z map is ready and plotted, and yes it is. So we've got a low in northeastern Michigan there, a 994 low, and you can see the occlusion and the trailing warm front that runs down through western Pennsylvania into northern West Virginia, then just kind of does this loop around through Maryland into the Delmarva Peninsula. And of course, we're seeing temperatures that are in the 70s south of that warm front. So that's setting up for the possibility of severe weather. And in the meantime, you have to the north, we've got this high that is sitting in New Brunswick. And of course, that's kind of anchored this southeast flow ahead of it. The gradient has gotten a bit tight, so we're getting some gusty southeast winds along coastal areas. And this has created a coastal flooding issue for some folks. We're for the areas from the shores surrounding Long Island on both sides, southern Connecticut, back to New York Harbor, and then down up and down the New Jersey coast down to the Delmarva Peninsula. It is minor coastal flooding that we are dealing with here. and nothing, and it's only the one tide that we're worried about. In the meantime, out in the west, we are starting to see the setup for what's going to wind up being eventually another storm coming out of the west and producing some heavy rains for the east for Halloween. That could be it looks like it's almost a repeat performance of this one, right down to the fact that there might even be a bit of a tropical feed again coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. But as far as the Rockies are concerned, you've got this cold high that is built down into northern Montana. And at least as of 8 a.m. Eastern time, we're seeing temperatures in the teens and 20s all the way down into Colorado, where a low is forming just west of Denver. And you can see the front that is with that snakes down into North Texas and then runs up eastward into the westernmost Great Lakes. So this area here is cold. This is where your main trough in the west is dropping. And we are going to see that much of that cold air stay in the west until we get this next storm system to come into the eastern part of the United States. The radar has been pretty loaded today as of 10 o'clock Eastern time, and the leading edge of the rain is now moving into Maine, but it's the western edge where you're seeing the heavy rains crossing Pennsylvania. It's already done in the western half of the state as of 10 a.m. So this thing seems to be moving right along. And I think we're going to start to see rains ending from west to east during this afternoon. But there is going to be some heavy rain to work through before that happens. And that's showing up in those yellow echoes. And on the southern end of this, down into western Maryland and Virginia, you've got what could be maybe a couple of developing stronger thunderstorms there in the darker red shading crossing Virginia and moving eastward. And the Storm Prediction Center, by the way, does have a slight risk of severe weather for northeastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, and the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. And we're seeing the northern edge of marginal risk getting up to about 195 in New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and then extends down into the rest of North Carolina and into a small portion of South Carolina. So it's a pretty wound up storm. You look at the satellite loop this morning, and you certainly can appreciate when you got this, gigantic swirl, that comma-shaped signature that is running up through the Great Lakes now, and the trailing front that follows southward. You can certainly see where we've got this cold front here that is running south, and of course we can't really see it too well, but the snaking warm front as described on that surface map that is moving to the northeast. And one of the tough things to try to figure out in a situation like this is who gets warm sectored, because some areas are going to get warm sectored and some are not. And in the meantime, you can also see the situation going on in the west, where we do have that next trough that's dropping in, and of course, there's moisture here that is feeding northeastward, so you're starting to set up the probability that there's going to be some snow issues with this cold high that is up to the north that has built on in. Now, the water vapor imagery is very impressive today, because you can see the shortwave in the east. The wrapped up upper low is so well defined here on the water vapor imagery. You can also see we're looking at the mid level, so we're looking at just kind of an average level of around, say, 10,000 feet or so. I think it gives a good view of what's happening. But that upper low and trough, very impressive. And of course, you've got all this mid-level dry air that is moving northeastward and getting into western Pennsylvania on the back side. And here's your cold front now. And of course, you still have this feed of tropical moisture coming up the eastern seaboard. You also remember, at the lower levels of the atmosphere, you're dealing with that southeast flow into the areas of the northeast, so you're really just saturating things quite a bit. And in the meantime, look at this next trough that's dropping down into the west, and you've got a bit of a powerhouse shortwave, a small one, but it's at least powerhouse enough that it is setting up for some snow here in a not a very large area with this first system dropping down. It's really more the second one that I think is going to wind up creating some bigger issues. So we looked at the storm risk, the severe weather risk, and just want to go over some of the rainfall amounts today from WPC, the Weather Prediction Center. Just have two views here with respect to rainfall. The first is the 3-day period from 8 a.m. this morning, and this ends 8 a.m. on Wednesday. So all of this encompasses the first event clearly, and for some areas it is not tallying the rain that has already fallen. But we're basically looking at an inch plus rainfall with maybe a few pockets of an inch and a half or more being indicated here in parts of southern New England and southeastern New England, on top of what already has fallen. Okay. And then when we go to the 7-day, now this is pretty interesting because this now takes into account what's going to be happening for Halloween, which is going to be another strong storm going into the Great Lakes. So when you look at the 7-day rainfall, much of what you see back through Kentucky and Tennessee and northern Alabama, northwest Georgia, in that 3 to 5 inch zone is the second system because they're already done with the first one. And we here, of course, in the Northeast, now you can combine a little bit of the first with more of the second, and you're looking at some 3 and 4 inch pockets of rain from the eastern half of Pennsylvania right through much of New England, except it does tail off a little bit as you go to the north, but still every bit of a couple of inches of rain there, and on up through upstate New York. And of course, you see the precip that's being generated in the Rockies on the order of liquid amounts of from half an inch in the darker blue to about an inch and a half, an inch and a quarter, an inch and a half amounts in those small areas of the lightest color blue. And of course, that is what we're looking at as far as snow is concerned. I'm just going to go back to the radar for a moment. I just want to point out, we do have a line of strong storms this morning moving across northern Florida and through Georgia and South Carolina, and also some rather hefty cells there popping up now in coastal North Carolina. So if you're watching this on a replay later today, it's 10:12 Eastern Time, a.m. So be sure to go to weather.gov to get all the latest weather information. And in the meantime, here's the setup for some of the snows that are coming down up into the northern Rockies, and we're going to take a look at that now as we look at I isolated the GFS model so you can see the two areas that are in play. The first one is dropping southeastward today, and you can see it here. It's a smallish area with a shortwave trough that is dropping in, and then you have the second one that drops down, and this is the more important one for Monday night. For Tuesday night into Wednesday. From this, we're going to get low pressure that is a stronger low that is going to come out. The first low shoots out ahead, starting with Monday. You see that first low just kind of shoots out ahead with an area of precip that heads up toward the lakes. Then you've got the second more important low, and this is going to be the powerhouse that winds up going on to creating a fairly sizable storm for the Great Lakes for Wednesday and Thursday. Meantime, just want to show you the 72-hour probability. I went with the 4-inch plus amount, so the blue area starts the 40% or higher, the darkest blue, and of course the really dark red there is 95% probability of 4 inches or more. So you can see it's pretty solid in much of southeastern Wyoming and into Colorado. This is 72 hours, so this takes us Sunday through Wednesday. Excuse me. So it does include both events, and I'm just going to pop up a probability of 12 inches or more in the next 72 hours, and you actually have a small area in northern Colorado of 80+%, but a rather large area of 50% or higher probability that there will be at least a foot. And if you want to extend this, just make it for 2 inches, by the way, showing you some snow possibilities in parts of southern Wisconsin and northeastern Iowa. So that's that first shot that comes out for tomorrow. And then, of course, you have the area back through the Rockies, the central and northern Rockies. Again, this covers both events. And with respect to snow amounts, I just pulled it up from the Weather Service in Denver going from Boulder rather. And you'll notice that the area of they're going 6 to 8 for Denver, 8 to 12 for Boulder, and Estes Park 8 to 12, Winter Park 8 to 12. So it's generally 8 to 12 with a few pockets of 12 plus, and then you get lower amounts as you go to the east. If you go to weather.gov/BOU, that is where you can find the latest from the Boulder, Colorado Weather Service, which includes Denver. I did notice that back up into parts of Wyoming, we had temperatures in the teens this morning, and they're getting ready, to see some snows over the next couple of days. So let's take a look. I'm going to just come back to the chat board really fast. I just want to see, I'm assuming that the sound is okay because I'm not seeing any more complaints about it. Again, I apologize if there are issues. The Windows 10 has a wonderful way of just kind of resetting my audio levels every single time I do a live stream. I don't know why that is. I set them and they unset them. It's just really frustrating. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening with regards to the upper air. It's such a very interesting pattern. And by the way, nothing we're seeing now is anything unusual for this time of mid-fall. It's an active pattern that we're in. It began a couple of weeks ago. It may take a break, maybe as we get into the beginning of November. Hard to say. I am well aware, because a number of you have messaged me about various runs of the GFS showing snowstorms in the day 13 to 16 time frame. Of course, this is how I describe what I would describe as the beginning of silly season that we're going to now have to deal with between now and April. So if you're new to this, get used to it. It doesn't mean anything when the models do things like that in the long range, because they do them all the time, and then the next run they're gone. If you're if you've been knowing about this for quite a while, then you know very well what to do, which is just to completely ignore. So our trough is swinging east. I've just backed it to Thursday so you can watch the evolution of what's been happening. And of course, we've had this vigorous upper low in North Texas. This created snows for Colorado and North Texas back a couple of days ago, down to about Amarillo. They saw their very early snowfall for them. You don't often see snow in North Texas in the month of October, but there you have it. They got it this time. And of course, we watched this vigorous upper low and trough hold on to a fairly decent identity here as it moved into the western legs and the ridge off the east coast. So, of course, all of this playing into the weather in the east. In the meantime, you're also seeing this next trough drop into the plains and Rockies. And there's two pieces to this. So you have a lead shortwave that we showed you on the water vapor imagery that was pretty obvious, and that's this shortwave trough that is dropping southeastward. That short wave is going to minor out to a large extent. In other words, it's going to flatten out and weaken a bit as it moves eastward. There's still a bit of an identity to it Monday afternoon, but we also, at this point, have another stronger short wave that is dropping southward. In the meantime, you've got an upper high off the Florida coast that is building. So we've got this southwest flow, which means that we're going to see weather conditions attempt to improve tomorrow. But there are some issues that are going to be developing, and that is with respect to a bit of an onshore flow for Monday night and Tuesday, but we'll get to that in a moment. In the meantime, out in the west, that first trough kind of lifts up toward the western lakes, and you sort of lose it a little bit while the second trough drops in. And this is the more important feature with regards to another storm system coming out from the southern plains and southwest for Thursday and Thursday night into Friday. That second trough digs down. It does briefly cut off down in southwestern Colorado. It was the European model that was showing this days ago. The GFS was overwhelming the east with cold air this week. Obviously, the GFS was clearly wrong. And I think one of the things we need to take away from this is the fact that when we saw the upgrade to the GFS occur, one of the things that they held back because of this cold bias that they found in the model back through last winter. Supposedly they've corrected this. I'm starting to wonder whether that correction has worked, because the model clearly does have a cold bias and continues to have a cold bias. So I would be really suspect with regards to what the GFS does in the long range, even more so than usual, because of the fact that it overwhelmed the eastern part of the U.S. This week with colder air, particularly the second half. And the European was insisting that this cutoff low was going to form back in the southwest, and that's what winds up being correct. And I'm going to look at the European in a moment, but that is swinging eastward. And of course, this is a very rather vigorous upper low that's going to drive up to the Great Lakes and then head northeastward from there. From yesterday, the European and the GFS actually agreed pretty well through this point with regards to eventually overwhelming, bringing a trough into the east and overwhelming the eastern part of the United States with some cold air next Friday, this coming Friday, and next weekend. And I think that's going to happen. As we after that, what I think happens is the pattern attempts to just kind of relax a little bit. It flattens out. You still have troughs dropping into the west. They don't seem quite as strong in the long range period. Not seeing them dig as far south like this one. I mean, it does kind of amplify as it moves across southern Canada, and that would bring shots of colder air. But at least after this Halloween storm for Thursday, we might see the pattern relax a bit. I'm not 100% sure which way it's going to go, but that's what it looks like. Okay, so with regards to how this all happens at the surface, we are seeing this surface low that's lifting up toward the Great Lakes. So we're going to wave goodbye to that. And we'll get our rains this afternoon. You can see the GFS. This is not radar, but this is actual rainfall. So the yellow areas are talking about the rainfall amounts of about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch in a 6-hour time frame. So this is what's coming from midday into this afternoon. That goes out. And you can also watch the low in the shortwave in Colorado and the surface low with that drop down into New Mexico with this kind of smallish area of snow in terms of coverage, but it's enough that's going to produce some significant amounts in some places. And of course, this shoots out northeastward on Monday into Kansas and Nebraska, and then up into southern Wisconsin and the western lakes. It's a weak system that runs ahead. In the meantime, here in the east, I just wanted to point out that there is Monday night into Tuesday, we do get a bit of a little onshore flow going on here with a weak high. The low from today just kind of drops down. You see the primary low dies out. You get a secondary low that forms at the point of occlusion, which is why you're getting that heavier rain band that's breaking out. That is really the beginnings of a second low that's forming and will be off the New England coast, and it drops in. And around that, we get high pressure that builds in, and this creates a bit of an onshore flow scenario as we get into Monday night. And for Tuesday, you've got a frontal boundary that is back over through to the west in the lakes here and runs down into Texas. You got this onshore flow, so I think that brings in at least some clouds Monday night and Tuesday, and maybe even a little bit of light rain or drizzle along the coast. Now, here's where all your cold air is. I mean, this is just really cold air that's coming down in the west, and it's been my in general over the years, the trough during the autumn months loves to set up in the western part of the United States first, and it doesn't really shift eastward until we get later in the fall or even in through the first months of winter. But we'll deal. That's another story for another day. So here's our system in the west. Now, this is the second one for Wednesday night and for Thursday. So this is the Halloween event, and we do actually see some snow, significant snows for Colorado and into North Texas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and a good chunk of Kansas. And then this low starts to come out of the southern plains. There's a little bit of a tropical feed that gets involved here and shoots moisture up northward. Your low by Thursday afternoon is sitting in southwestern Illinois, There is another one of these warm fronts, and of course you've got this high that is up in New England, so get ready for some rain to come in. And how far north that warm front gets, I think this could be a situation where we might see some severe weather being produced later this week in parts of the Tennessee Valley and in points south. It runs up, the low goes to central Michigan, and really wraps up here to a 975 low, which would probably produce some substantial snows in parts of Wisconsin and Iowa. The rain in the east would be another big rain, relatively large rain producer on the order of a few inches, and that goes all the way up into New England. After that, behind it, you get this the overwhelming of cold air, if you want to call it that, for this time of year anyway, does move into the eastern part of the United States next weekend, and then you've got another system that drops down from the lakes. But then we don't see anything of consequence really until we get later in the forecast period with another low to the lakes and the cold front. Now, whether that's a strong low or not remains to be seen. That's too far out to get too involved with it. I want to take a look at the European model, which I didn't even get a chance to look at this morning. So we're going to be looking at it together. And how I wish one day they would just let us see at least something with resembling precip. And a few other parameters, but they just don't do that. And I doubt that they ever will. But we're going to look at the European surface here. And, you know, the European now, if you remember days ago, had a really, really wrapped up storm going into the Great Lakes. Now it's backed off with a weaker low in western Ohio that gets wrapped up when it gets up into Canada. I think if you want to look at this in terms of strength, you look at what's going on in the upper air, it certainly argues that there could be a sizable system going into the Great Lakes. And I think one of the things you have to just bear in mind when you look at these, you know, you got to get a flavor for what's happening in the overall pattern and in the models. You want to get into a situation as a forecaster where you're not looking at weather models for the sake of giving you certitude. You want to have an understanding of the weather that's actually going on, and then you can, you know, you use the guidance for just that, to guide you, and not as some absolute. This is why you see forecasters out there, you know, one minute they're telling you one thing, and then after the next model run, they're telling you something else, that the models have done this, the models have shifted that. If you don't have a clear understanding of what's actually happening in the atmosphere, then all you're really doing is just model reciting, which any of us can do. You know, one of the aims that I have always had on my channel, is to try to get everybody to really sort of recognize what the upper patterns really are, what is really happening here, so that you can get a real sense of what may may happen down the road, which may very well be different from what the models are showing. And you know, here's the European, of course. You see the lead system, and now the second trough that drops in. It just doesn't seem to be quite as vigorous on this particular run with the upper low, and it takes it, you know, further, you know, up into the into Minnesota and Iowa for Friday. It's just astounding to me how the whole upper pattern for the European was so much different than what the GFS had back a week or so ago, and it actually turned out to do a much better job. I'm just thinking right now that this is going to wind up being a much more vigorous system, given what we're seeing happening in the overall pattern. After that goes by, you know, you get this colder shot of air, just kind of overwhelms. You can see that the trough sort of hangs into the eastern part of the United States through the first part of next week on the European model, which would kind of make sense here, and that will make for some colder than average temperatures. Now, how much of that cold air sweeps in is another matter. Does it, you know, do we see the coldest air staying basically from the mountains of Pennsylvania westward, or does some of that move in? Now, if you look at, this is for Friday, you're seeing a pretty large swath of below average temperatures from the Rockies all the way to the northeast. Let's say the normal-ish line is down in southeastern Virginia, and from there southward, you're trying to see that cold air push toward the for Saturday and for Sunday. So it does get in here to a certain extent, and then you get a little bit of a reinforcement that tries to get in here for the first part of the week of November 4th, Monday, November 4th, and going forward. So at this stage, on the on the upper air, we're looking at a troughing in the east, ridge in the west, ridge off the Atlantic coast, a little bit of a cutoff upper high between Iceland and Greenland on the European model. I can even pull up, let's pull up some teleconnections here this morning. ESRL, okay, and just to take a look just for laughs, because this is all on the 0Z run. And you can see the teleconnections are actually not the best kind of teleconnections you want to see, with a negative Pacific North America index for the next 16 days, an NAO that is actually strongly negative right now, which would account for the deep low that we're seeing going to the lakes. But the other factors are not the way you would like to see them set up. And please remember that these are coincident indicators here based on the models. Okay, so they don't really have the predicted nature that you might think they do. They're just basically you taking a snapshot of the model, and it's showing you what these teleconnection calculations come out to. But the very next model, it's going to be different. Then as we look at the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation with this setup, it's actually off the wall negative going through this next 2-week period. Kind of goes a little bit closer to the neutral line toward the end, but the EPO at least is going to be responsible for the colder look to things. The NAO is telling you that the pattern is going to be progressive. Everything's going to be moving from west to east, so that would argue that that colder air will spread into the east, but you don't have a whole lot of ridging going on in the western part of the U.S., nor do you have the PNA, the Pacific North America Index. You got to remember, it calculates not just the ridge in the west, but it also calculates pressure changes in the Pacific, in the Eastern Pacific, in the tropical Eastern Pacific, and I believe along 160 west, which is really important to the deep trough that you usually want to see. If you're looking for troughs in the east, you want to see some kind of deep trough at 160, which is about where Hawaii is, and that's usually a driver of the of a stronger PNA index. So the negative PNA, Pacific North America Index, is kind of telling you that you don't quite have that scenario. So if you're a winter weather lover and you're looking at the GFS showing snowstorms, and then you kind of look at this, these teleconnections, and no, okay, just plain no. All right, so let me get let's get to the chat board. I'm gonna reheat my coffee, which I'm drinking out of my 4 Easter mug, by the way. I decided this morning it might not be a bad idea. Sunday mornings, people are kind of sitting around, and maybe they're doing something for the day and planning it. Maybe they're not. I've been trying to, spend my weekends where I got at least a little bit of downtime with all the stuff that I'm doing during the week with regards to live streams and everything else. So maybe this Sunday morning type live stream could work as a fair compromise. By the way, let me just mention that in New Jersey, the plan is that I'm going to be at the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey on Wednesday, November 22nd at, I believe, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So make a note of that on your calendar. I haven't really had many library appearances this year. There was one back in March, but that was it. And that was also that was in North Jersey with the North Jersey Weather Observers. Some of them are watching this live stream right now, and a big hello to you, and make sure you measure your rain today. But I will be at the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey on November 22nd at 7 o'clock, so do come out. I see Izzy is planning to come out. The same trough that has been in the west for the fall for the few years have also been awful for the past fall for snowfall in your location. Well, it's always about location, location, location. There's no guarantee that everything's going to be picture perfect coming this winter, but that's just how it goes. Sometimes you could have perfect weather conditions, but for some local reasons, you get these snow holes that develop with respect to the signature for the winter time. Seeing that every year there's a snow hole somewhere. So it's all part of the fun, Izzy. You know, you just try to figure it out. It's never a guarantee on how it's going to turn. Ruthless Goat, who is our friend from Colorado, is up. Another 50-degree drop in Colorado temperature-wise. I bet it was with that front coming through. You had that situation back, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, where you went from 80 to 18 in 24 hours. And I did notice back the last couple of days, so temperatures up in the 60s. Well, now you're getting that big drop again, so get ready for some snow. You're definitely getting an early winter out your way. David Schwartz, thanks very much for hitting the super chat today. Really appreciate it. That will be a stogie for me later on. Maybe to watch the Giants play Detroit. And the Giants and Jets are on at the same time today at 1 o'clock. Now, I know there used to be there was an unwritten rule. They would never schedule those two teams at the same time. But they no longer do that because I think, once upon a time, there was just the three networks. So they divvied up the entire audience. Those days are long gone. So I think the idea that they could, they'll schedule games when they schedule them, and Jet fans will watch the Jets, and the Giant fans will watch the Giants, rather than grabbing that audience, that crossover audience later on in the day. I guess they just don't see it, especially with people are watching it up on their devices on multiple monitors. It's a whole different world than what I grew up in and what many of us have grown up with. Let's see. Just also from Izzy, well aware of the amazing site called Tropical Tidbits. I want to be. If I heard of pivotal weather, it has some really QP. Here's the thing, Izzy, with respect to pivotal weather. I have. They do have nice looking graphics. I have repeatedly emailed them asking permission to use them. They have never responded. So until they respond and say it's okay, I'm just not going to use them. I don't like to really put up stuff if without the permission of the person that has it. Even it doesn't say anything on there that I've seen that says you can't do it, but I really just don't feel up to you. I just don't want to do it unless they say it's okay. Ruthless Goat, thanks for hitting Super Chat this morning. Also appreciate it. And keep me posted on Patreon, by the way, with regards to what's going on snow-wise with you, because I'm going to be really curious to see what happens with this double snow event that you're going to be getting. Jason, I think Pivotal Weather, I believe they have a lot of free stuff on there. It's just that I really, and I think it's great. The stuff does look very good. They've got some very good, looking graphics. I just don't like to pop stuff on without their permission. So, and like I said, I have emailed. Maybe they'll hear this on the live stream. I have repeatedly asked them. I'd be more than willing to give them credit for, their product. But if you don't respond, you don't respond. Also, let's give credit to tropicaltidbits.com and Levi Cowan, who's, he's been very good about letting me use his stuff, and I appreciate that greatly. And yes, his graphics are, his the amount of information that he provides on Tropical Tidbits is just phenomenal. So that's a good thing. Zim is on, and Zim just became a father on Tuesday. Congratulations to you. Enjoy and many blessings. I actually am past that stage now, and I have waiting for my second grandchild to arrive in January. So that's going to be a really exciting time. Gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna do this to get down south to see the kid, but we'll do what we have to do. Good morning to Steely Dan. Nice to see you on board. Ruthless saying just some very light snow now. The heavier stuff is still in Wyoming, but heading your way. Fort Collins, Loveland down to Denver. Upslope conditions tonight. Another cold storm on Tuesday. That pretty much sums up what's going on there for you with regards to the setup for snowfall. And David Schwartz, I know you're enjoying this miserable day that we have here in the Northeast today with the rain. So let's take a closer look at. Well, the chairman has stop the presses. He's late today. He's late, but he's here. The chairman has arrived. The great Scott Briller, who, by the way, is usually the first one when I post up that the live stream is going to be at a certain time. Patreon members get an immediate notification because I put one on there. So if you're on there, you get it. You know that when the live stream is coming up. YouTube notifications are kind of iffy, which, by the way, you got to make sure that your notifications for YouTube are turned on. You got to make sure that you're logged into the app if you're doing it on the phone, because if you log off the app, then you won't get the notifications. And then it's sometimes if I'm doing a video at a time, a live stream at a time when other people are doing live streams, they have a limit in terms of how many notifications they can send out through their system. So sometimes you get the notifications late. So the Patreon folks kind of have an extra advantage because they get it 2 hours before. So once that notification comes out, the chat board for the live stream page is open. So you can jump on. If you've got a Gmail account, you can jump on and participate in the early show, the pre-show chat, is what I like to call it. And Scott Briller is almost always the first one on. So today, I guess you slept in a bit late. And by the way, best to your mom. I know she's been feeling a bit under, but feeling much better. So say hi to her, and maybe I don't know who she's picking today in the Jets or Giants game. So I'd be curious. Ask her who she likes in the Giants Detroit game and the Giants Lions game, and in the Jets Jaguars game. Let me just really quick, for those of you, I do have a subscription platform. It's on Patreon. The link to that is on the descriptor to this live stream, or if you're watching it on a replay, the descriptor to this video. It's just $2 a month. And not only do you get extra weather, but it does go a long way to help support what I'm doing here, which I will be doing on a full-time basis beginning November 15th. So, again, it's $2 a month. If you are a snow removal guy, if you're a landscaper, or if weather is really something that is important to you with regards to your daily decision making, you might consider some of the higher tiers, because with the higher tiers you get a lot more hand-holding with me. So, of course, you can message me at any time with regards to and speak to me at any time. Which comes in handy when you've got storm situations going on. So it's patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And again, it's on the descriptor to this live stream, or if you're watching this on a replay, descriptor to this video. How do the Appalachians, asks Zim, impact the coast weather-wise? Why can't it be cold in Ohio? Why can it be cold in Ohio but warm east of the mountains on the same latitude? Well, because it really depends on where the trough position is. So let me just illustrate here. I'll bring up the European just as an example. So it has to do with the depth of the trough and where exactly that trough is. Okay, because that really is kind of, if you think about it, if you're sort of on lanes of a highway, I think that's probably a good way to describe it. So if you are on the outermost lanes or the innermost lanes, that's going to kind of impact your traffic flow. Now, just for example, if you look at this trough per se, all right, the coldest air, the absolute coldest air would be, and we're speaking in generalities here, okay? So this is an air mass that's coming into the east. your coldest air is going to be, fairly close to where that upper low is. And that's up across the Great Lakes. And if you follow the flow, the surface air would be moving in this particular direction. Now, of course, as you migrate away from the core of the cold air, you're going to see less and less of it. And if you're on, say, the southern edge of this, you're actually probably closer to average in terms of temperatures. So this is a situation where, at least initially, it is going to be colder back west of the Appalachian Mountains and back toward the Great Lakes. It's, you have where the trough sets up and how that trough sets up. Now, here's another situation. For example, supposing you have something that is more on the flat side, okay, like this, where the flow is west-southwest. Well, now your air is coming you've got air that's coming down out of Canada and then goes east-northeast across the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. So in this particular situation, where I drew the arrow is kind of where you'd be on the edge of the colder air. The colder air would be more this way, through the plains, the northern lakes, and into New England. And then if you head down in the southeast, you're actually going to be dealing with warmer than average air. So in a situation like this, you're probably going to have some kind of east-west frontal boundary between warmer air that's down in this direction and colder air that is coming down out of Canada to the north. So you might wind up with maybe some kind of overrunning precip in that battleground zone. But it really does depend on where your upper trough is, the orientation of that trough, and ultimately, how far west it is, because the further west that they are, when you get those colder air masses to move to the east, they have a lot more time to modify. And that's another thing that you have to take into account with these weather systems as they move along. Okay, so Jets, Lions, Tim, Latex Dreams, Jets and Lions are your picks for today. Honestly, I could probably see a situation where both the Giants and the Jets lose today. I don't know. I'm kind of coming at it with sort of a very disinterested view of things. Wasn't U-shaped. I'm not sure what was you talk about with the trough. The trough was U-shaped, where you get this sort of broad bowl. Then you're talking about cold air that just kind of gradually spreads out, Tim. Chuck Cardillo, you probably getting into that heavy rain pretty soon. Let me just take a quick check of the radar. Where is it? Here we go. So I'm just looking at, heavy rain is just now moving into eastern Pennsylvania. It's going to be getting to you, Chuck, pretty soon. As I can see, it's already moving into Sullivan County. Let's pull up the OKX radar. So here's the Upton radar. Hang on. Let's bring that forward. You can see it here. So this is the Upton radar at the moment. We've got some heavy rains as we're approaching 11 o'clock Eastern time, 10 minutes of the hour. You can see some heavy rains now moving into North Jersey. You have, we'll go to the Fort Dix radar for Mount Holly and take a look at what they got. Oh, come on. There we go. This is the Mount Holly radar, so you're getting these waves of heavy rain. I'm going to switch to, let's try State College, which is, I think, CCX. And there's the back edge. So the rain is done in Williamsport and Harrisburg now, still going on in southeast PA. Not much. The rest of Pennsylvania is fine. We'll go take a look at Albany. And I think they are EN or EEX. I always forget. Looks like they might be, yes, they are ENX in Albany. And there's Albany's radar. Getting some heavy rains, especially north of I-90 and also now moving into the Catskills, and that heavy rain moving through the Poconos and heading northeastward. And we'll take a look at, let's try the BOX radar. So for Boston, that pretty much will cover everybody. And then we'll go south, because I know Robert Brown is looking for rain where he is. So this is the Boston radar, where we've got mostly light to moderate rain in southeastern New England and down into southern New England. We'll go further south now. Let's go to LWX in Virginia. Oh, come on. Try it again. LWX. And we got, look at that, folks. It's coming up at 11 o'clock right now, and we've got some pretty hefty thunderstorms there. There might be some severe cells, or certainly a narrow squall line that is from Westminster to just west of Baltimore and Washington, south and west. So this is, that could be, your Storm Prediction Center's risk for severe weather here showing up. Just let's punch up the Weather Service, see if they've got anything going on, at least right now. Actually, we do have special marine warnings up for parts of Chesapeake Bay, north of Annapolis. We'll go to, here's Mount Holly's view. So you see, by the way, all the coastal flood issues with coastal flood advisories that are up. And also, I just want to show out west, you've got winter storm warnings up for much of the southeastern quarter of Wyoming, northern Colorado, northern and central Colorado, where you're looking at, by the way, you've got a winter weather advisory for up to 8 inches of snow in Denver, but just to the west of there, you've got winter storm warnings that are posted. Ooh, and here's something, if in Alaska, we don't often look here, although we should for Alfred's sake, from Wainwright, Alaska, who is not on this morning because he's probably still asleep, given the time zones. But they've got also a big area of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up for central and northern Alaska. When we're talking about Alaska in terms of geography, that's a pretty big area. We don't check very often. I really should pay a little more attention to this with regards to the weather going on in the great state of Alaska. All right, let me come back here. Let's go back to the chat board. We'll finish this up at the top of the hour. Hang on one second. And I hope the sound was okay today. I'm really, I'm very frustrated with having to deal with audio issues every day with respect to Windows, the new Windows 10, which for some reason just really loves to reset my audio. I had it good for a while, and then it went ahead and it goes and changes things. If I shut it down, and then turn on my computer the next time I use it, I have this issue. But no one's been complaining since the very beginning, so I'm assuming that you guys either are hearing me very well and there's no need to tell me, or you're just completely ignoring me, one or the other. Stephen Franco, what implication does sea height ice versus snowpack? I don't know what the direct implications are for us. I was reading yesterday someone pointing out that the lack of sea ice could be driving troughs down in the west in such a way where you're setting up for these Santa Ana winds, and that ultimately has been causing the wildfires in California, and so that was kind of interesting. I didn't really realize that, describing the kinds of short waves that are dropping southward from Canada that are causing, and from Alaska and the Arctic that are causing this. I don't know. I think in a broad sense, you could probably make a case for the wide open lack of sea ice would produce a heavier snow cover in northern Canada, which maybe has sort of the downstream effect of having making it for colder weather in the continental U.S. But it doesn't help you with trying to figure out where exactly the troughs and ridges are going to be, because ultimately that could all be true. But if the troughs across the United States set up in the west versus in the east, then all that cold air goes in the west. If it sets up more in the east, then the cold air goes in the east. or maybe it creates a situation where you have a lot of variability. I don't know. That's a very good question. It's a question that I guess is way above my pay grade. I would probably, that would have to be addressed to someone who is actively involved in climate science and climate research to give you a good answer. And I don't know that they may not even be able to give you the good answer. They might be able to talk about it in a broad sense, but I don't know that they can even give you a straight answer. Mike, a cooling and dirty connector, loose wire in the microphone. Maybe, but you know what? This is a brand new microphone, and the connectors, everything is connected. There's no loose connections. There's nothing. So, I don't know if you're still hearing static there or audio popping, but I tend to pop my peas. That's been a career thing with me. I've always been, for some reason, I pop my peas. William Uber, nice to see you. Yes, very wet out here this morning, certainly. It hasn't rained here particularly hard at my house yet, but we're waiting for the sweep of heavier rain that is out to the west. Charlie Baker has joined on. So for you latecomers, Ruthless, you got a lot of static. I'm sorry. I don't know what's causing it. I really don't. If I pull, I can't even make these switches. It's really very, very frustrating to me because I'm trying to do this as best I can, and I got a new microphone that really helps make the sound better. By the way, when I pre-tape the weather in 5s, there is no issue. So I don't, and I have all the other audio sources on my on my computer turned off, so there really shouldn't be any static. I don't know where it's coming from. Let me just make sure. I can actually see. I'm looking at the audio levels of this, so they're bouncing around, and it's just me. My computer's making like a little light spinning noise. I mean, I don't know if that's coming through as static or not, but no matter. All right, look, it's coming up on 11 o'clock Eastern time, so I'm going to put an end to this and make sure everybody gets out there and enjoy your Sunday how best you can, giving the weather conditions. Thank you again to Ruthless Goat out in Colorado and David Schwartz hitting Super Chat. Really do appreciate it greatly. I'm doing things in reverse today, so I'll probably do a weather in 5. I'm going to do a weather in 5 for later today. That'll after this weather event is over, and then that'll cover the new week. So this might work on Sunday. So do the live stream in the morning, and then I'll do weather in 5 for later today. All right. So have a great day. Patreon members, look for your extra stuff today as always. That's patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee for those of you who are interested again for a greater weather experience, if you want to call it that. And by the way, if you do want to support this channel, it doesn't cost you a cent if you shop on Amazon and use the Amazon link that's on the description of this live stream, because we are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. So if you used my Amazon link and do your Amazon shopping, you don't have to buy what's on there. You can just use the search bar, the search tool, and shop. But if you get there through my link, Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin out of their pocket, and that goes a long way to keep my free apps free, which you can download the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee app on Google Play or on the App Store. Angry Ben's Weather app, the Angry Weatherman for Android devices, also free. So make sure you got those downloads. And I think that pretty well covers it. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you later. Just look for a weather in 5 later today.